Bearcats student at the corner.
Happy Tuesday and happy almost opening day. Welcome to Cats at the Corner. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We're getting started about an hour later than we'd like to usually, but it happens. Baseball games have rain delays. Turns out radio shows can too. My name is William Moore, and I'll be hanging out with you over the next half hour, going over the weekend series against the Florida Gators and giving you a preview of the Bearcats home opener tomorrow against the Miami RedHawks. But first, let's get into sports around the area. First off, Bearcats soccer. The Bearcats soccer team will host their first home game of their spring season at Gettler Stadium, where they will be taking on the Toronto Blizzard. That game is scheduled for Thursday at 9 a.m. So a bit of an early one. Make sure to go check it out if you are interested. Moving on to Bearcats lacrosse. The Bearcats haven't been in action since their 14-11 win over Youngstown State last Wednesday. The Bearcats are 4-1 for their first time since 2018, highlighted by the freshman Cameron Callahan. 5 straight hat tricks to start her career, third in the nation with 24 goals. The Bearcats are back in action today, and that game is actually underway. Started at 4 o'clock at Ohio State. So that's going to be one you're definitely going to want to keep your eyes on. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. This Bearcats lacrosse team is red hot. You're going to want to make sure to go check them out if you haven't already. Moving over to Bearcats men's basketball. The men's basketball team lost to Memphis 73-76. They're going to be back in action for their final home game of the season on Sunday, taking on SMU. Tip-off is scheduled for 2 o'clock at Fifth Third Arena. Moving over to the women's side, the women's Bearcats lost in overtime 64-54 to UCF. They'll be back in action for their final home game of the season tomorrow at 7 o'clock, where they will be hosting the number 25 South Florida Bulls. So be sure to go check that out and support our women's Bearcats basketball team. Moving over to the NHL, the Columbus Blue Jackets beat the Edmonton Oilers in a goal fest last Saturday 6-5. The Blue Jackets had a quick turnaround and lost on Sunday in overtime 2-3 to the Minnesota Wild. The Jackets will be back in action at the KeyBank Center tonight to take on the Buffalo Sabres. Puck drop is scheduled for 7:30. Now moving back over to soccer, FC Cincinnati won their season opener 2-1 against the Houston Dynamo last Saturday. Goals scored by Sergio Santos and Obina Nwodu. FC will be back in action at TQL Stadium against Orlando City. Moving on, let's get into college baseball. AAC weekly honors. No Bearcats this week on the AAC weekly honors. AAC Player of the Week, Andrew Brate out of UCF, was 7 for 15 on the week, including 3 doubles and 6 ribbies. Pitcher of the Week was Grant Adler, 6.0 innings pitched, 1 hit, allowed, 2 walks, and 11 Ks for the Shockers in last Saturday's game against Utah Tech. Honor roll players for the week are Luke Nowak from ECU, Trey Yesvige from ECU, JT Durham from Memphis, Anthony Hansen from Memphis, and Garrett Pennington from Wichita State. Let's take a look at what some of the teams around the American Athletic Conference were doing this past weekend. ECU moved up 2 spots in the D1 college baseball rankings to number 9. This came after 2 wins against the number 12 North Carolina Tar Heels. ECU is back in action today at Duke. So that's going to be an interesting one. A lot of close rivals going on for a lot of teams in the American recently, and that's North Carolina then Duke. It'd be a big deal if it was in basketball. Well, of course, North Carolina's got a really good baseball team. I'm not really sure how Duke's doing this year, but North Carolina's got a really great baseball team this year. So, going to be interesting. Of course, ECU is going to be the team to beat in the American this year. We're all kind of aware of that. So it's always interesting to keep an eye on what they're doing. UCF swept Clemson in a 3-game series this past weekend. Led by AAC Player of the Week Andrew Brate, the Knights left a, quote, bad taste in Tigers head coach Eric Bakic's mouth because of how mouthy the Knights are. The Knights baseball team went viral for heading over to Death Valley after their win and charging down the hill. like the Clemson football team. And look, UCF, it doesn't feel like they're a very popular brand among a lot of fan bases around there, not very, very well liked in some instances, and this probably didn't help them with the Clemson crowd, but, it's going to be, it's just something you don't see very often, something that's just interesting. You wonder what what made them want to do it. It's interesting to see from an outsider perspective of someone that, doesn't have too much stake in that game. UCF is back in action tonight against Bethune-Cookman at Daytona Beach. First pitch is scheduled for 6 o'clock. Moving on to USF, they would lose their weekend series 2-1 to the FAU Owls, the future American Athletic Conference members FAU Owls. Their middle game went to 11 innings, which ended up in the Bulls' loss. One of the Bulls' loss. They're going to be back in action tomorrow, taking on number 16, Florida State. First pitch is scheduled for 5 o'clock. And I tell you what, these Bulls have had an incredibly difficult schedule to start their season. First starting it off with the Big Ten champions, Maryland, then going to Florida. And, we're all very well aware of how good Florida is. And now they're going to Florida State. USF's got some, they've had some tough games start their season. Definitely didn't start it off with really many easy ones. Moving over to Houston. Houston lost 2 or 3 of its games in the Kleber Bank College Classic. Their one win came in a 14-5 victory over Utah. They would lose to Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, and Incarnate Word. Back in action tonight against Texas Southern. First pitch is scheduled for 7:30. Tulane got their first win of the season on Sunday against St. John's. They still lost the series, though, 2-1. I was able to catch them in a game 1 and the St. John's comeback. And I tell you what, as someone that's not a huge fan of Tulane right now, that was a pretty fun game to watch. The Green Wave are back in action tonight at 7 o'clock, hosting South Alabama. The Wichita State Shockers beat Utah Tech in a 4-game series, 3-1. The Shockers were led by AAC Pitcher of the Week Grant Adler on Saturday, resulting in a 10-0 win for the Shockers. No midweek matchup, but they will host Oakland for a 3-game series at X Stadium starting Friday. And then Memphis is having a really good start to their season at 6-2. This past weekend, they won their 4-game series against Youngstown State, 3-1. An impressive series landed JT Durham and Anthony Hansen on this week's AAC honor roll. The Tigers' next game is today at 5 o'clock against Central Arkansas, so that game's already underway. Central Arkansas made news earlier in the season for upsetting Vandy. However, they were swept in this past weekend series in 3 games to Missouri State. So that's going to be an interesting one to keep your eye on if you are a big, not sure anyone around this area is a big Central Arkansas fan, but it's just kind of interesting to see how teams kind of do that. How any day any team can be on and something like that can happen. Moving on to local baseball, Ohio State lost 3 games this weekend in Phoenix to a combination of GCU and Gonzaga. Their only win on the weekend coming Sunday against the Gonzaga Bulldogs. No midweek matchup for the Buckeyes, however, they will be back in action this weekend in the Frisco Classic, playing Mississippi State, Cal, and Oklahoma. And then Norwood got their first win of the season and many more as they swept Western Carolina in a 3-game series. The Musketeers were led by Big East player Matt McCormick. McCormick went 10 for 18 on the week at the plate, including 6 RBIs and 7 run scores. 6 RBI, pardon me. I know people get upset when people say RBI. 6 RBI and 7 runs scored. Xavier was back in action today at 2 o'clock. That game already concluded against Northern Kentucky, where they won 5-3. That's going to do it for our baseball coverage from around the area and around the American Athletic Conference. So let's get into it. Let's get into what happened this past weekend. So the Bearcats went down to Gainesville, right, to face number 7 and now the now number 6 Florida Gators, and were swept in 3 games. However, I'd say there's still plenty of positives, and there's a lot of learning experiences that Coach Googans and his squad can take away from this weekend's series against Gators, which we will get into as we go through today's show. The first thing that I want to say before we get too deep into what happened, though, is it kind of just is what it is. At this point, we're really early in the season. That's a really good team that's going to do a lot of special things this year. But so will we. The Bearcats are going to do a lot of special things this season. At the end of the day, you can be upset about it, but I really think this Bearcats team is gonna, they're gonna take it on the chin. They're gonna learn from it, and this is down the stretch. This experience is gonna make this baseball team, a lot better, and I really do believe that. And before we get in the game breakdown, something that I really liked is that we were down 5-13 heading into the bottom of the ninth. So that game's, you hate to say it, but that game's pretty much over. You don't have a great shot of scoring 8 runs in one inning, but Kyle Shutman goes up to the plate. And he swings nearly out of his shoes, goes yard, and hits goes deep, hits a 2-run homer. And that, I'm an outsider. I don't know Kyle Shutman personally. I don't know any of the players personally, but from an outsider's perspective, it seems easy to, be like, well, we're about to get swept. It's the ninth inning. I'm just going to go up there, kind of go through the motions and get back on the plane to Cincinnati. But it seems like he had the opposite mindset. The game was pretty much over. They might as well end it on a high note and send someone home with a souvenir, which is exactly what he did. Of course, I don't know what he was thinking in that moment. And, Kyle Shutman had a couple defensive miscues that stood out in game one, which, those stood out a little bit, but a lot of those seem like communication issues, which I feel like Coach Guggens can address, and this staff can really get right. It doesn't seem like something that should be too big of a deal going forward. He's a young guy, and that's good. That's going to get sorted out, and that I have all the confidence in the world that that's going to get sorted out. But no. That was his first home run as a Bearcat, and so, that's just something that you like to see. The game's pretty much over, and this guy's going up to the plate, and he's literally swinging out of his shoes, trying to go yard. That's, we expect great things from Kyle Shutman, and I'm really excited to see everything that he's going to do for the Bearcats through his career. And then someone else that I thought had a really good series was Ryan Nicholson. Ryan had 4 hits on the weekend, including 1 big fly in game 1. And, like I said last episode, Ryan Nicholson's going to do some great things for the Bearcats this season. And we're really going to be looking forward to watching him make some magic on the diamond all year. All right, so let's get into our breakdown. Let's get started with game 1. The Gators got off to a hot start, scoring 6 runs in the first 4 innings. In the 5th inning, the Bearcats bats would get into it, plating 3 runs via Carrington Cross 2 RBI double in a Ryan Nicholson solo tater. The Bearcats would go on to score 3 more runs in the game via a J.P. Sponsel hit-by-pitch RBI, a Sean Springer RBI groundout, and then J.P. Sponsor's back again with a RBI double, which ended the scoring for the Bearcats. However, it wasn't enough to match the consistent output by the Gators offense. The Gators bats scored runs in every inning that game except for the first and the not-needed bottom of the 9th, en route to a 13-6 victory over the Bearcats in game 1. Winning pitcher was Brandon Sproat, who is 2-0 on the season, and the losing pitcher from the Bearcats was Garrett Harker, who moves to 0-1 on the season. Let's get into our 3 stars of the game. Again, these are in no particular order. First of all, Cade Curlin, freshman. This dude can, he's going to be doing, Gator fans are happy that he's just a freshman because he's going to be doing a lot of great things for the Gators for a long time to come. That dude can, he can mash. Cade Curlin, first star of the game, then Brandon Sproat, and then finally, 3rd star of the game, Ty Evans. Again, those are in no particular order. Moving on to game 2, Chase Horse started the game for the Bearcats. His final line would be 1.0 innings pitched, 2 hits, 5 runs, 4 of which were earned, 1 walk, and 1 K. Gave up a grand slam in the first and left the bases loaded for Dylan Broski in the 2nd inning. One of those runners did reach via a error, though, so I'd like to make that known. So here's the deal about that. Chase Horst, he's a freshman. He's going into a big environment, and it's one of the top teams in the country. And I've said it 100 times, and I'm sure I'll say it 100 more. And everyone listening is going to get sick of it. This guy is built to be a baseball player. He's going to do some great things over the course of his University of Cincinnati baseball career. He's only a freshman. He's got a lot of time left. He's going to do some great things, but he's also going to have some outings like he had on Saturday. And so, my hope for, Chase Horst is that he's able to, cut himself some slack. You just got to know that, that's a really good team, and you just didn't have your best day. And, as Bearcats fans, we're not going to hold that against him. It's tough. That's a really tough, that's a really big environment that they have down there at Gainesville. Really good team. Gators are going to do some great stuff this year. So, hopefully we're going to hope that Chase can kind of cut him some slack, kind of be a goldfish, learn from it, move on, and be ready for your next start for the Bearcats. So the Gators jumped out early and never really looked back in Game 2. They scored 13 runs on the day, including 3 big flies. The bats were going, and on the other side, so was the pitching. Hurston Waldrop got the start for the Gators. 6.0 innings pitched, 3 hits, 2 runs, both of which were earned, 3 walks, and he tied a career high with 13 strikeouts on the day. Look, Hurston was in rare form on that day. He had nasty stuff, including an absolutely gross slider. And, Bearcats hitters, struggle to figure out what to do on the day. And, that's going to happen. And, it's not going to be every day where, you've got an SEC pitcher at the plate that's, throwing the game of his career. So I'm not, you look at it, you can be upset. You can think, the Bearcats should have done more, but, it's behind them. Learn from it, move on. We're on to the next. The Bearcats will only score 3 runs on the day, those coming via a Kyle Shutman RBI ground out. Pardon me, a Kyle Shutman RBI ground rule double in the second, and then a Carrington Cross RBI single in the 5th, and a Landon Viderek RBI single in the 8th would round out the scoring for your Cincinnati Bearcats on the day. However, in the 8th inning, Ty Evans would call game early via a 2-run homer that ended the game 13-3 via run rule. So your winning pitcher for Game 2 was Hurston Waldrop, who moves to 2-0 on the season, and your losing pitcher was Chase Horst, who falls to 0-1 on the season for the Bearcats. 3 stars of the game. First star, Hurston Waldrop. Like I said, that's a rare performance that you've got a guy that's on like that in a game, and all the credit to him. He came out, had a career game. All the power to him. That was just a great performance by Hurston Waldrop. Then moving on, we're going to go Josh Rivera and Wyatt Langford, rounding out the 3 stars of the game in Game 2. Moving on to Game 3, the Bearcats would have a better offensive outing on Sunday, scoring 7 runs on the day via Cam Guidry reaching on an error, which allowed Cole Harding to score. Then later, Cam Guidry would get back on the score sheet, getting hit by a pitch, which would allow Griffin Hughes to score. Landon Viderek had an RBI walk. Cole Harding had an RBI single in the 6th. Kyle Shutman had an RBI single in the 7th. And then finally, rounding it out, as we mentioned earlier, Kyle Shutman hit a 2-run dinger in the 9th. However, the Gator Bats would be in rare form on Sunday, hitting a total of 8 home runs on the day, which would set a new program record for the Gators, bringing us to our final score of Florida 13 and Cincinnati 7, completing the series sweep for the Gators. Look, we all know it. Gators have some good bats. There's not much more you can say about that. That's a tough one for the Bearcats. I thought Chase Hopewell had a pretty good start to his day. It's tough when you see that and you see that the other team put up, 8 home runs on you. But again, these Bearcats are going to have to do their best to, acknowledge it, learn from it, and move on. And I'm sure that's what Coach Guggens has been saying, in the locker room all this week leading up to tomorrow's game against Miami. So we're going to get into our 3 stars of Game 3. Our 3 stars are going to be Josh Rivera, Jack Caglione, and Luke Heyman. This series brought the Florida Gators up to number 6 in the nation. They are 7-1 overall, and brought the Bearcats down to a 2-5 record. The Gators will be back in action tonight at 6 o'clock against Jacksonville. And, with that, we're going to close the books on the Bearcats series against the Florida Gators. I've said it probably 30 times throughout the span of this show, but really, all you can, you take the positives and you take the lessons that you learned along the way, and you move on from it and you get ready for, you've got a whole season left. So, you've got to, don't let the Florida Gators, beat you more than they already did. And what I mean by that is, they beat the Bearcats in 3 games, but, don't try not to let it, weigh on your mind and affect your next pitching outing or your next time out at the plate. Be thinking about that, which I'm sure, these are all mentally tough guys that we've got for the Cincinnati Bearcats, but still it's tough. So, move on from it, learn from it. You can be upset with it, but we're really excited for everything that these Bearcats are going to do going on this season. And so the Bearcats will be back in action tomorrow for their home opener against the Miami RedHawks. That's right, the Bearcats are going to be back in Clifton for the first time this season. First pitch is scheduled for 5 o'clock at UC Baseball Stadium. This game will be available to watch on ESPN+, but if you can, get down to the ballpark. Tickets are free for UC students, $5 for adults, and $3 for youth, senior, faculty, and military members. It's truly the best deal in town, and I'm not even being paid to say it. So it has to be true. And then make sure you also head down because you don't want to miss the Natty Boys koozie giveaway. First 500 fans will receive a Natty Boys koozie. So if you want that, make sure to get down to the ballpark early. And if you do get there early, stop by the Bearcast Media broadcast table on the concourse behind home plate and tell Ethan and Preston that Will from Cats at the Corner sent ya. And I'm sure I'll be hanging around there too for a little bit. So let's take a look at the Miami RedHawks. Their last matchup against the Bearcats was May 7th, 2019 in Oxford. The RedHawks won 7-6 in 10 innings. Miami is 0-7 to start the season with 3 losses at Georgia Tech, 1 loss to the Indiana Hoosiers, and 3 losses to North Alabama. However, you see that they're 0-7 on the team, but this is a rivalry game, team that's pretty close to us, so don't count them out because it's a hungry team looking for their first win, and boy, you better believe they'd love to play spoiler against the Bearcats on Wednesday. So a little look at the Miami pitching staff has combined for a 12.0 ERA, so look for the Bearcats to get on the board early and often. And then on offense, I want to run through a couple of the RedHawks that you may want to keep an eye on. These are Rylan Zabrowski, Brian Zapp, Zach McDonald, and Parker Lester. Starting off with Parker Lester, the man with 2 first names. He has 9 hits on the year, including 3 doubles, a .375 batting average, .885 OPS. Hasn't gone yard yet this season, but can definitely knock in runners if he's got runners in scoring position. So be on the lookout for him if he's up at the plate and you got a couple runners on base that the RedHawks are going to be looking to send home. Moving on to Brian Zapp. I read his name, kind of reminds me of Zapp Brannigan from Futurama. .368 batting average, 1.257 OPS, 7 hits on the year, including 1 double and 2 big flies. Overall, these are the guys that I'm highlighting. These are going to be the best players going into it. But you see 0-7, but they've still got some very solid hitters for the Miami RedHawks this year. So you're definitely going to want to look for the Bearcats to get on the board early and often, especially if this is going to be kind of a bullpen day for the Bearcats. We only had 3 games this past weekend, but we did see Dylan Broski pitch, I believe, like 4.1 innings in Game 2. So, this could possibly be a bullpen day for the Bearcats. I almost expect that it will be. I have not heard anything about the possible starting pitching situation for the Bearcats, but if I do, I will give an update via Twitter. Moving on to Rylan Zabrowski, 321 batting average, 1.101 OPS, 8 hits, 2 doubles, and 3 taters for the Miami RedHawks. He leads the team, I believe, in home runs on the year with 321 batting average. These guys are putting up some good numbers against, ACC and in Georgia Tech, and we played Indiana a couple times last year, so we've got a good idea of what they are going to bring to the table. So good hitters for Miami. And then finally, Zach McDonald, 296 batting average, 910 OPS, 8 hits, 2 doubles, and 1 dinger. Again, overall, they've got some solid hitters for the Miami RedHawks, and this is like I said, they're going to be motivated to play spoilers. So the Bearcats are really going to have to make sure that they show up, which I believe they will, because everyone wants to win in their home opener against their home crowd. We got friends, family there, and so the Bearcats are definitely going to show up and hopefully get the win and get back in the win column against the Miami RedHawks. And then that brings us to the new addition that the Bearcats are going to be unveiling starting at the home opener on Wednesday. The new video board has been installed. I was walking back to my dorm from class today, and I saw what was it? It was like the American flag waving in the breeze on it, which I assume was for the national anthem. Look, it looks good. I appreciate I think we can all appreciate the commitment that this shows, that how serious the team is. The school is, in baseball, and making it a really nice, making an even better environment for the fans going into the Big 12 starting in 2024 for baseball. We're moving in July, I believe, but baseball won't start till 2024. So it's just stuff like that you really like to see the university do, and the university invests in all of its sports. I know some people might not think baseball is as popular as football or as basketball, but lots of people around here love baseball, and I really am excited for where this program's going, especially with all these new renovations that we're getting at UC Baseball Stadium. So that's going to do it for our Tuesday show. Thank you very much for listening. Be sure to check us out on Twitter at Cats Corners. Show's called Cats at the Corners, and if you miss an episode, we have you covered. Episodes are uploaded the same day on YouTube at Cats Corners, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Thank you so much for tuning in. I don't know why I said it like that. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back Friday to give you a breakdown of everything that happened in the home opener against Miami, and we'll also take a look at the weekend series coming up against the North Alabama Lions. But until then, I've been your host, Will Moore. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on Friday at 1 o'clock. Take care.